Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Ed Malone, pastor at the Central Christian Church, Fort Worth. Appreciate you coming down this morning. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Will you pray with me? Our God and our Heavenly Father, we humbly bow before you. We praise and worship you. We thank you for the blessings of life. We this morning pause to remember those who suffer under the wake of the devastation of Hurricane Irene. We pray for those city and county and state officials who at this very moment seek to aid and assist their citizens in this time of distress. Father, we also pause to remember the two of our county who died in the battlefields of Afghanistan. We pray and our hearts go out to their families. Let them know the extreme gratitude that we have that their sons paid the ultimate price in the war for freedom. We pray now for this Commissioner's Court this morning. Imbue them with your spirit of wisdom and strength and justice. May the deliberations be in peace and harmony, for peace and harmony are the chief support of all well-regulated institutions. We give you our praise and our honor, for we pray this in your heavenly and holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend. Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have one announcement as it relates to the agenda this morning. That's under the Purchasing Department. It would be item J1, which would be bid 2011-144. You have a revised court communication as it relates to that particular agenda item in your red folder this morning. Also, members of the court, just for your information, the PEBC is meeting this week. It meets Thursday, September 1st at 3:30 p.m. at the COG. Also, one final comment, it does relate to the agenda. We have several items that we're going to be bringing to the court on the briefing agenda today, probably about 3 or 4. Thank you.
Thank you. As was mentioned in our invocation, we did have 2 young men who lost their lives this past weekend. One of those was a Tarrant County resident, and I want to close our court today in memory of Michael C. Roberts. Michael was a U.S. Army specialist. He was 23 years old, was a 2006 graduate of Richland High School, and died Saturday from injuries he suffered when insurgents attacked his unit in Afghanistan. Roberts was on his second deployment to the Middle East when he was killed. He served in Iraq in 2009. He has an older brother, Brian, who is serving in the Army, and another brother, Patrick, who has also served. He was killed in Kandahar province when his unit was hit by an IED device. Michael Roberts joined the Army in November of 2007 after graduating from Richland High. He was assigned to the Military Police Company. At Richland, he was a varsity wrestler and played in the band. His immediate survivors include his parents, David and Kathy Roberts, and his brothers, Brian and Patrick. And I would just ask that we all keep him and his family, keep them in our prayers for these coming days. So as we have that moment of sorrow, at the same time we celebrate We celebrate the fact that, if you'll recall, a few months ago, mainly at the urging of Helen, we raised supplies and stuff to send overseas to Afghanistan. And today we have Captain Hannah Musa of the United States Air Force here to present us with a flag, and as she comes forward, we have a couple of some pictures that were taken while she was in Afghanistan. And I'll turn it over to you and let you make any comments that you'd like to make at this time.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to extend my gratitude to Tarrant County, to Judge Whitley, to everyone who was involved in the process of getting in goods and goodies and all kinds of personal hygiene items that were sent overseas. I worked in the 455th Combat Stress Unit, a combat stress control clinic as a psychiatrist, where we saw many of these individuals, these soldiers, these airmen, these Marines, Navy corpsmen who were in the line of fire, who were away from their families, who didn't have lots of support, who maybe just needed a bag of cookies or a razor because they couldn't find one out in the back deserts of Afghanistan. And to get those tiny little things from individuals like you all meant a tremendous deal. It let everyone know that and I may be a little bit emotional. I just got back a couple of weeks ago. But it let them all know that there were people that were caring about them. And sometimes that was all that they needed to get back out and do what they do every single day, just as the two gentlemen that you mentioned previously. We often saw members of units from units that had lost individuals, and that indeed was something difficult for them. But they did their job, and they kept on going, and they went back out more dedicated than before. And because of that, I had this flag flown over our Craig Joint Theater Hospital in Bagram in honor of your service and your dedication and the things that you did for us, keeping us in mind and keeping all those airmen and soldiers in mind as a token of our appreciation.
I would like for all the court, if you wouldn't mind, let's come down there and let's get a picture. Get us all?
We did add a few photos, given that we're close to 9/11, and also the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and also just letting you see kind of what the environment was like there. All of the generous things that you donated were. So this right here is at FOB Farah in southwest Afghanistan. FOB stands for Forward Operating Base, so those are typically the places where there are not very many people, and it's a little more austere. There are not as many things. There's not a PX or some of the things that you might find at a larger base. So there's no place to buy detergent and toothpaste and toothbrushes and things like that that you might find at one of the larger bases. And this, in fact, is a piece of one of the twin towers that had been donated to one of the units who was serving there, and they had it shipped to this FOB with them in their supplies, and they set up this memorial in honor of all those who lost their lives and why they were doing what they were doing. It really helped motivate them and keep them going. And so I thought that was very special, a very special thing. This is my clinic at the Combat Stress Control Clinic. We were in tents. I was working with the Army, so I had many Army mental health technicians that were with me. And this is at our PAX terminal. This is where our helicopters, we were mainly in a rotary facility, and so this is where our helicopters would come in. A few looking kind of tough here. Not necessarily that tough. So this is what we built up. We had half plywood walls inside of our tent, and one of our high-speed staff sergeants built these shelves, so on top with just some scrap 2x4s that we had so that we could use them. These were some bins that we got from the hospital in order to just kind of, there wasn't an easy way to display a lot of the things, and so we were known as the place that even if you didn't want to talk to the mental health provider, because sometimes they're a little scared of that, they could come in our, we called it our free X, where they could come in and get any kind of the supplies that they wanted, snacks or popcorn and any kind of personal hygiene items. And so that was our humble little escape for some of the members who came to see us or just stopped by to pick up some of the things that you had donated. So again, I just want to say thank you for all that you did. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And I would move that we receive and file that presentation. A motion to second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. At this time, I'm going to go back and ask for the approval of our minutes of our special call meeting of August the 22nd and our regular meeting of the 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. At this time, I would like to call Dr. Garnett to the podium. And I'm going to read just a couple of things before. We have a number of folks here who are with ARC, and I want for all of them to recognize, and I do want to mention that ARC has recently received an award, I believe, called the Chapter of the Year Award from the Texas Advocates, but that's really not why you're here. The reason you're here today is that we're going to proclaim tomorrow Dr. Richard Garnett Day in Tarrant County. And I'm going to read the resolution. And he didn't know this, I don't believe, unless somebody spilled the beans here recently.
False pretenses.
That's right. We brought you here under false pretenses. Whereas Dr. Richard Garnett, Executive Director of the ARC of Greater Tarrant County, received his doctorate degree in psychology from the University of Miami in 1978, and whereas for over 39 years Richard was in private practice on a full-time or part-time basis, providing counseling and psychotherapy, divorce and family mediation, and served as an expert witness in criminal justice, mental retardation-related cases. And whereas throughout his career, Dr. Garnett has served as an educator, including as an adjunct graduate professor at TCU and the University of Miami, and as an instructor at the North Central Texas Council of Governments Regional Police Academy, where he taught courses in stress management, abnormal psychology, prisoner relations, hostage negotiations, and criminal interrogation. And whereas Richard, in the last 6 years, has served as the chairman of the Texas Council on Autism and Pervasive Developmental Disabilities, board member for the American Association of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, board member for the ARC of the United States, chairman of Autism Learning Community for the Mental Health Connection, president of the board for the ARC of Texas, and chair of the Justice Coalition on Offenders with Mental Impairments. And whereas Dr. Garnett currently serves on the board of the Texas Office for Prevention of Developmental Disabilities, the National Council of Executives of the ARC of the United States, and the Texas Committee on Long-Term Care for Children with chronic disabilities. And whereas in 2009, Richard helped establish the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Need Council of Tarrant County, a community collaborative that he chairs, and also serves on the Fort Worth Mayor Committee for People with Disabilities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, extend our heartfelt congratulations to Richard for a career marked with dedication, extraordinary contributions, and a legacy of accomplishments. Be it further resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, on the occasion of his retirement, do hereby proclaim August 31st, 2011, Dr. Richard Garnett Day in Tarrant County. In witness whereof, we've heretofore set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 30th day of August, 2011. I will move its approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Richard, this is a small renewal of all of the work and all the hard work you've done. And we appreciate it.
Well, I'm speechless. That doesn't happen too often to me. I just want to thank Commissioners Court, Judge Whitley, and others for this honor. I'm overwhelmed. All the years that I've been doing these kinds of things, I've worked on behalf of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which we consider to be the invisible population because they're not recognized, they don't have a place at the table, and they're constantly banging on the door to try and get the services they need and the supports they need from the community. In Tarrant County, there's over 100,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, plus their families. So you're talking about a potload of people. They are in the businesses that we have, they're in the schools and social organizations we have, they're in this audience. Somebody, just about everybody you meet, either has a relative or a next-door neighbor who has intellectual and developmental disabilities. So awareness is what we're constantly working at. I hope that I've got some productive years left after my retirement tomorrow. I know I'm going to continue in a lot of the organizations I'm associated with, but my wife also has a honey-do list that starts with clean the garage and fix the fence, so I think I'll stay busy. But thank you very much. I do appreciate this. It's an honor, and this will hang in my hall at home.
Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you
very much. Next, Commissioner Fickus, I believe you, no, wait a minute. Well, yeah, I believe you actually made a presentation.
I did. Last night, I had the honor of reading our proclamation and resolution for the Douglas and McGar parks, which were two parks that were used by the African American community and the Negro baseball leagues and teams throughout this part of the country. And these were parks that very few people really today know much about, but the research was done and they were located very close to the current McGray Field. And we had a great celebration. We had a Texas historical marker that was unveiled. The Tarrant County Historical Commission was very much involved, and also thanks to the generosity of Jim and Gloria Austin, who I believe are here. We presented the resolution to Jim and Gloria. There was also resolutions from the city and from the governor's office. And thanks to Carl Bell for his help, who owns the cats. And it was a very, very nice ceremony, and we had a great turnout, I thought. And did the cats win? I didn't get to stay. Did we have y'all didn't stay for the whole game. Well, it was a great evening. And Jim, I don't know if you want to come up and Gloria, make any comments.
Good morning, County Judge Whitley, and to our honored Commissioners Brooks, Wynn, Ficus, and Johnson. I'd just like to say we certainly do appreciate being recognized and receiving the proclamation. We think it's very significant that our young people know about this park and that it become a part of our history that is talked about and remembered. So your giving us this proclamation meant a great deal to the validity of what this park did in this community. And so on behalf of the Multicultural Western Heritage Museum, of which I have the pleasure of serving as the executive director, it is a part of what we are trying to do to help educate our young people in our community about the many contributions that were made to this city and to our country. And I'd like to say that we have two of our board members here who do serve on the Historical Commission who were a part of it. And I'd like to ask if they would stand, Ms. Clara Ruddle and Mr. Bob Holmes, and thank them for being a part of this program, bringing it to us and giving Jim and myself an opportunity to participate. We love the city of Fort Worth, and we love Tarrant County, and we're very proud to do whatever we can to help our community.
Turn around there and get a picture. He's wanting a picture.
It's okay to smile, Jim.
And I just wanted to say the event yesterday was phenomenal. We had about 100 people come out to dedicate the marker. And we had Bill Blair, who played in the Negro League as a pitcher. And he was there. And then we had some other cat players and got some baseball stories. So it was a phenomenal occasion that this park was down on the Trinity where Texas Electric was, and the park is there no more. But now we have this marker that sits at the flagpole at the LaGrave Field so that people will know that this park was so important that young African Americans had a place to go play baseball back in the day. We thank you for this proclamation, and we really appreciate it so much. Thank you very much.
Just a question, because Mr. Blair was great in his talk last night. Now, who did he say was the best baseball player ever?
Willie Mays.
Willie Mays?
Yes,
That's right.
Willie Mays. So,
Say hey.
no, he played with Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige. I mean, it was a phenomenal occasion to just be there and hear all of that history. So I encourage you next time you're out at the LaGrave Field, stop by and see the marker. Thank you so much for this occasion.
Thank you.
Commissioner, that was a move. Motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a congratulatory resolution.
I would move approval of the congratulatory resolution honoring the life's work and retirement of Dr. Ernest L. Thomas, who recently retired as president of Tarrant County College South Campus.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 9 additional items to bring to you this morning. First one, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve an order which redraws the Tarrant County Commissioner precinct boundaries as it is based on the 2010 census.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court enter into an agreement with the Department of Justice to accept award for the improvement of DNA services as it relates to the Medical Examiner's Office.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The Court, on item number 3, we're requesting interim funding as it relates to the District Attorney's Protective Order Unit. This is for a period of 60 days. We estimate this amount is about $15,000.
Move approval. Second. On items 3, 4, 5, and 6, they're all interim funding. Have we received letters of of award on all of these?
Yeah, we've been talking with the state. They've just been a little bit slow. We believe that we'll probably get these grants within 30 days.
Can we approve?
Warner, that was a motion.
Include all 3 through 6.
Second.
We have a motion to approve items 3, 4, 5, and 6. Any discussion? Please vote. Motions pass unanimously.
Members of the Court, if we can move to item number 7, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a resolution which provides for the county's consent to sell property which is listed in your court communication, which this property has been held in trust for the taxing entities by Arlington ISD. Just a quick comment on this. We are now being able to put this back on the tax roll. After court costs, Tarrant County should receive about $17,600. Tarrant County Hospital District should receive about $15,100 in delinquent taxes. Staff is requesting approval.
I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The question that I have, 3300 East Abrams Street in Grand Prairie. Is it Abrams? It's Jefferson in Grand Prairie, and if it was east, it would be east of Center Street, which would make it Dallas County. So is it in Grand Prairie or is it in Arlington?
It's in Grand Prairie, but Arlington ISD.
And it's called Abrams in Arlington, in Grand Prairie.
This is the address that was given by our delinquent tax attorneys. And it's the address on the tab roll also.
Okay. Jefferson, every place else in Grand Prairie.
It's right before it turns into Jefferson Street.
Okay.
Have any other efforts been made to receive more dollars for this tract? And I know it's got a huge tax lien on it, but
It does have a huge tax lien, and it has been setting, Lisa, you might want to come up and talk about this a little bit.
I mean, this is,
It's been on the foreclosure list since 2001. So,
well,
I
but
did call-
nobody's been willing to accept, I'm assuming nobody has been willing to accept less than the tax owed. Is that correct? Until now.
Arlington ISD has these properties, and they were not actively marketing. They had a different delinquent tax firm the past few years, and it just the properties were just sitting there. Nothing was happening with them. Linebarger now is their delinquent tax attorneys, and what they asked Linebarger to do was to put these online and to try to sell them. But that's all that's being done. I will let you know that I question thinking that maybe we could get more for this because there's not an active sales process going on. I did talk to the city of Grand Prairie about it, and they were going to approve it because they know this property has been sitting there and it's downturned. And they know that the company that's buying it is an adjacent property owner, and they feel that they will take their facility, will upgrade it, and things will happen on the site. However, I have talked to Arlington ISD, and her board has requested that they look into something to more actively market these properties. So we're going to be working with them because they're going to look at, there's other properties that they have that they're holding in trust. So they are looking at doing a request for proposals for a broker who will actively go out and market some of these properties, and so that we can let more people know that they're out there and see if we can at least get our back taxes owed on this, if not more, because they've been holding these and having to upkeep on the property for all these years also. So, you know, I think in the future we're going to hopefully see a little bit, get at least more of the taxes owed.
But we're being asked to vote today to approve a sale.
True. If you choose not to approve the sale, then we'll put it back out for bid or ask somebody to up their price. I just wanted to let you know that the other two entities have gone ahead and approved this. But I do know that going forward, there were two other properties that came to us, and the Arlington ISD decided not to take action on those and to look at a different way to market the properties. But they did approve the sale of this one.
Can you talk about the condition of the area and the potential of a buyer in that area? Can you talk about the area, how...
Well, that area right now does have a lot of vacant properties. It's run down. There's a lot of high weeds, and that's why I think the city of Grand Prairie felt that this was a buyer of an adjacent property, and they felt like something would actively happen on this location. and that's why they wanted to go ahead and move forward with approval of this sale.
How many acres?
4 acres.
He's buying it for 60 cents a foot. And the going rate in that area is...
Well, the property right now is valued at over $400,000. I agree. I question it. That's why I've looked into this a lot more, to find out what was going on. So we can say no, and we can send it back out and see if even this bidder is willing to come back with a higher bid.
The total taxes that are owed to us are about, us in the hospital district are about...
A little over $70,000, around $70,000. I think 35 for us and about 31.
So it's about, about 68.
And we get our pro rata share
Correct.
of the 100, which leaves us
We
way
get about-
low.
Right, about 17,000 and
We're getting about 50 cents on the dollar.
Well, probably less than that. They owe 275, we're only getting 100. So,
Well, if that's what the court wants to do, then I will withdraw my motion, if that's what the court decides.
I'm going to vote against it. So, y'all, whatever y'all want to do.
We did have a motion and a second right now.
Okay. I don't think we have anything to lose to go out for bid. We can only gain. Can we always go back to that same buyer and accept the offer subsequently?
I think you can always go back and ask.
Right. So, given that condition, then I would withdraw my motion and make a motion to turn down the
So
purchase.
basically, if we just don't take any action, then we're in effect not agreeing to the reduction.
Okay.
How about you?
I think we may be penny wise and pound foolish on this particular item. It's in a very depressed area. You've got a company that's willing to apparently redevelop the site. We do get some money on the deal now as opposed to rolling the dice and maybe not getting any at all. I would be inclined to accept this offer and go on.
Get it back on the tax roll, somebody paying taxes on it.
Put it back on the tax roll.
This property has been on, for sale now, on their website since November of last year. So it's been out there, 10 months?
They haven't had anybody, like a broker or anybody pursuing somebody to purchase this property.
I understand this is the only bid that they've received on this property.
But the only marketing they're doing is on Linebarger's website?
Correct.
Yes.
What's the proximity of this to 161?
It's not that far off of Great Southwest Parkway. It's probably only a few blocks off. So it's, I don't know, I'd have to look down, but it's only a few blocks off of Great Southwest Parkway.
Are there any minerals available? The minerals.
We can't do anything with the minerals on this. I mean, by state law,
Can the owner, the guy that's going to pay $100,000, he can do something with the minerals.
if there's minerals still on that property, yes, he gets the minerals. It goes with it.
Well, I'm familiar with that area, and if we market a little bit harder, I think we can get a bit more money for it. But I'm not sure it's worth the.
And it's not up to us to market it. We're not the ones holding it in trust.
So it's currently on the rolls at 275,000?
No.
I mean, 400,000, excuse me. And they owe us 275,000 in taxes.
And we're going to sell it for 100. If it's got minerals,
If it
has minerals.
If it's worth what, if it's worth more than that, then maybe he'll come back and offer us full taxes and he'll pay 150 for it and we'll get our money out of it.
If they offer the full taxes, they won't have to, it just goes straight through. If they pay the full taxes, it doesn't have to come to the Commissioner's Court.
Which is 275, right?
No, the tax judgment's $187,000.
How much?
$187,000. If they pay that amount, then it just clears through by state law. They don't have to come back.
You say, I thought it said in here someplace that current taxes were $275,000 to all entities.
That's what is currently shown on the appraisal district's website with interest and penalties because they keep accruing. At the time of judgment, the back taxes owed were $187,000. So when, by state law, they can go and pay off the back taxes at the time of judgment when it was struck off, which is $187,096.
And so we have no choice as to whether to forgive the interest and the penalties. That's what's done.
Correct. That included, that $187,000 included penalties and interest up to that point, but then that stops it.
So why did we show $275,000 in the court communique?
Because that's what's on our books. I said currently, the appraisal district, I mean, our tax office shows that because that is what's showing on,
And
if you
that's
go
what
look at our
shows
tax.
up when you go to the
tax
Linebarger website?
If you go to our appraisal, to our tax website right now, it shows that there's $275,000.
That's all right, you need a realtor? Okay. You got two different numbers that are vastly different, and if somebody looks at that website and sees it's worth 4, it's, you owe 3, you're not going to touch it for less than what the taxes are, and that's been the stance. But the taxes are really 180-something? I think I guess we haven't even begun to give this property an opportunity.
We're going to beat this dead horse a little bit longer because I want to know why, if all we can recover is $187,000, why we're showing $275,000 anywhere.
It's not, I mean, somebody could bid, that's what is shown on the tax rolls. If you go to that account right now in the tax rolls, it shows that $275,000 is owed on that
So
property.
why is the tax, you feel a little nervous over there? Come on forward. You may not be able to help us because you're still in the honeymoon period here.
Looking at two different dates. You're looking at the date of judgment and the current value.
Well, but if we can't collect anything more than the day of judgment, why are we still accruing interest to imply that we can?
What this says basically.
Required to by the law.
But you don't have to collect it?
You can't collect it?
Would you all simply like us to pull this down and do a little more research and bring it back to you?
I think
that'd be an excellent idea.
I thought it might.
Part of the question, though, is why do we continue to accrue interest that we can't collect?
Right. We'll do that.
Regardless of the
GK stepped
answer
in.
to that question, we still have an opportunity to collect
Something out of it.
It's $100,000.
and something's better than nothing. Plus, it goes back on the tax roll. And we can't make the Arlington ISD do anything about this.
No, I know we can't, but I kind of agree with Commissioner Fickus in that somebody's fixing to get a piece of property that may be worth somewhere between $100,000 and $400,000. And if we can, maybe we can convince them to pay $87,000 more, and we can get a little bit more money out of them.
You need to just look at some really basic stuff, like, are there minerals? And we haven't, you need to get a professional realtor to deal with this?
Okay, Commissioner, I understand what you're saying. Here's kind of the way this stuff goes. First of all, Arlington ISD owns this property, and they're holding it in trust for us, okay? Whenever we come to the point about discussing minerals, in a tax foreclosure, minerals are not subject to it. It's a property. It's surface property. It's not property underneath the ground. Now, I will tell you what I would suggest, that we not take any action at all on this, just because we simply delay it for a week. That way, it maintains this bid, and so we have not turned anything down. And we'll simply answer those questions and bring it back. Commissioner Fickus, there is a lot of property that has been struck off the tax rolls that we bring to this court and other taxing entities that we get less than the amount of taxes owed. And the philosophy has been, and this may not be a good example, it may be a good example, that the reason we do this is to get this property back on the tax roll.
Okay. I don't have, the taxes are one issue. Another issue is the value of the property.
I understand
Forget the taxes, put them aside, somebody's going to pay them. The property has a value. There's something that it's worth. Is it worth what it's being appraised at? Probably not. Is it worth 1/4 of what it's being appraised at? Probably worth a whole lot more. This is a bottom fisher kind of deal. And some guys, and bless him, he has a business there next to it according to the documents. That's great. And he may be the best, highest paying guy out there. But we really haven't given that property an opportunity to anybody other than the bottom fishing community, okay? Who's out there and looks on these tax collection attorneys' websites trying to find out what bargains there are. And if there are minerals, if you buy it and the minerals are with the property and haven't gone to somebody, whoever buys it gets those minerals. Would that not be correct?
I would think so, yes.
Okay? In the Barnett Shell, pretty much 1 acre of land in the Barnett Shell that has been leased, I'm not talking about the leasing bonuses, but it's worth anywhere between $70,000 and $100,000 in revenue if a well is, if it is producing. Okay? So it's a significant amount of dollars value in that property if there's minerals on it. That's not even talking about what the land's worth, which according to our tax office is worth almost over $400,000.
It's fixing to be worth $100,000.
What now?
I said it's fixing to be worth $100,000.
I know. If we sell it for that, that's what it's worth.
Let us go back and talk with the other taxing entities.
And just so that we're talking about, getting it back on the tax rolls, that would gain us all of $500 a year between the hospital district and.
Chiquita, do you need a motion to delay the
In fact,
taking
I
action?
do not need any motion. I
Okay.
just ask that whoever made the motion and the second of you just simply pull your motion and second down.
I withdraw my motion.
Would you like to quickly move on to the next item?
I am ready anytime you gentlemen are.
Go right ahead.
Members of the court, on item number 8, we're requesting that the court approve the posting of Tarrant County's intent to lease. This concerns property at the resource connection to Refugee Services of Texas.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? He asks with great hesitancy. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, this morning, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a professional services contract with Connie Bannister Chitwood as it relates to the provision of supervision and training of social work students concerning probate court number 1.
Move approval.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 2 subrogation recovery checks, the first in the amount of $2,403.09. The second in the amount of $100, requesting authorization for the auditor to deposit same in the recovery account.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve Amendment Number 2 to the contract with Arthur Wyman Architects for architectural services related to the 1895 Courthouse Clock Tower Historically Sensitive Rehabilitation Project.
You might want to go ahead and elaborate since there's not a immediate motion or second here.
Yes, sir. Art Wyman expended all of his contract and administrative hours assessing the damage on the clock tower, but if he had not done that, we'd have been exposed to several $100,000 worth of change orders from the contractor. The contractor asked for a request for information from the architect as a normal practice during the construction administration, and the architect had to submit additional architectural supplemental instructions to the contractor to make sure the change orders stay within reason.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. How many extra, you're talking about around 400 hours, 460 hours?
416 hours, 461 hours. That equates about 16 hours a week through the construction, which is a couple of days. We originally had planned just a couple of site visits to come in, but he's had to spend quite a bit of time, and I put in the electronic court book some examples of some of the analysis he's done on the concrete, the granite, the steel, and, of course, the copper. We found a lot of hidden conditions when we took off the asbestos-containing roofing cement, and we sent Art up there to do some damage control.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve Amendment Number 3 to the Jacobs contract for architectural and engineering services related to the Medical Examiner's Office expansion project included in the 2006 Capital Improvement Program. This is needed because when I negotiated the contract with Jacobs back in 2008, I negotiated 18 months of construction administration, and later when we figured out exactly how long the project would take, once we had it designed and figured out how much work we were going to have to do in the existing building, the contract administration time was 21 months, which is 3 months longer than I negotiated.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning, and thank you. We have one additional item for the court. We're asking the court to approve organizational changes to the Sheriff's Office and County Criminal Courts 4 and 7. The court is being asked to transfer 2 deputy sheriff's positions from the Sheriff's Office to Criminal Courts 4 and 7, effective September 1st. Senate Bill 1887, passed this most recent session, allows judges to appoint their own bailiffs. The Sheriff's Office has no objection to this transfer, and there's no fiscal impact.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a
We don't have
second.
an option in this, do we?
No, sir. No.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brewer. Public Health. Good morning.
Good morning. Howdy, everybody. We talk about A&M going to the SEC. It is requested that the Commissioners approve a resolution for HRSA, Health Resources and Services Administration, regarding the Ryan White Part C process. Tarrant County has been committed to providing HIV and AIDS services to a 38-county catchment area for the last many years. Over the last 20 years, we provided services, both care and treatment, for about 10,000 individuals with HIV and AIDS, and successfully managed about $75 million through our area. AIDS Resources of Rural Texas, until recently, until actually tomorrow, has been the manager or the grantee for Ryan White Part C funding. AIDS Resources of Rural Texas, in both the Weatherford and in the Abilene areas, is closing their doors as of tomorrow. With that, Part C funds were $390,000 awarded directly to AIDS Resources of Rural Texas from HRSA for services for those clients. Tarrant County contributes about 1/3 of the funds, where the HRSA funds were about 2/3. What we'd like to do is for HRSA to keep the funding in the communities where the clients reside, which would be in the Weatherford and Abilene areas. So with approval of the proposed resolution, we'd like to send HRSA a letter expressing Tarrant County's interest in applying for those Part C funds and maintaining the services and the continuity of care for clients in those areas.
Do I have a motion? I've got a public participation form, but
I'd like to hear from that person before we make a motion.
Then I would call at this time, I'd call David Mack Henderson forward. If you would please give your name and your address when you come forward for the record.
Thank you. My name is David Mack Henderson. My residence is at 3000 South Hewlin Street, number 124, Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you.
I come to you today as an officer of the civil rights group Fairness Fort Worth, and also as a member of the executive committee of the Planning Council for the North Central Texas HIV Planning Council, which Margie and her colleague Jamie Shield participate in helping guide us in some of the allocation decisions that we face regarding HIV/AIDS in the North Central Texas region. This is 38 counties we're talking about, not just Tarrant County. I'm sure you're all aware, but for the education of our audience, the administrative agency here manages the funds and the contracts for an enormous quadrant of Texas. And in fact, it represents what would have been the 11th largest state in the United States. This is no small task. And the agency has to contend with funding streams that are not always reliable. And that would be the State Department of Health Services as well as Health and Human Services. And there are various parts to the Ryan White Act, various fiscal years that are involved, various geographic regions that are involved, some of which are eligible for some funding but not others. We recently were led to understand that we were going to lose $500,000 in Fort Worth funding, and only in the last few days have learned that, thank God, that's going to only be a little more over $150,000 instead. The loss of the funding that Margie was just speaking of, added to what we've already learned we need to contend with, creates such vacillation in the revenue streams that it is nigh impossible to plan for the services to be provided. We're talking about staff that has to be hired and trained. Either you can hire them and keep them for half a year or maybe 5 years, or you can't. When these clients that are underserved in some of these populations that we administer find themselves without services, as it seems to be now happening in Abilene and in Weatherford, guess where they're going to come? JPS. So if you want to talk about two different costs involved, we're talking about the human costs that are involved with clients, and I believe we're talking over 300 here, about 350. And of those, over 200, is my understanding, have no access to either private health care, private health insurance or Medicaid. So we're talking well over 200 clients who have no health home now, no medical home. That's what's happening with the funding mechanism that has essentially disappeared off the geographic map, disappeared 6 counties in the Part C funding mechanism that we learned about very recently. And the assumption seems to be that, well, if we don't provide for it, then, and we don't account for it, then someone else will just pick up the slack. And I'm hearing third hand that the understanding is, well, now that Tarrant County will probably absorb all of these clients, that would be a duplication of services. And we all know that's not the case. If more people walk in the door for various health centers and service providers who are willing in Fort Worth to provide these services, they need to be compensated for that. Otherwise, our client base here in Fort Worth also suffers. What we're asking you to do is to approve this resolution so that we can continue providing, to the best of our means, the income stream that will help service the clients that we know naturally will start coming across our county line, so that we can continue the services for them as well as continued care for our own clients here in Tarrant County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The operations in Weatherford, the operations in Abilene, those are discontinuing?
Yes, AIDS Resources Rural Texas is closing the doors as of tomorrow. We have made arrangements for folks who are HIV positive that need medical services to come into Tarrant County and be provided those services. Those in Abilene, we're working with Hendrick Medical Provider Network to get a contract in place for clients to be seen in those communities. Again, the funding that we provide will only pay for a fraction of medical services for those clients. There are roughly about 38 clients from each location we have enough money to pay for their medical care for a year. That leaves about 120 clients in each location that would be without services if this money goes away.
Any other questions? We do have a motion and a second. Okay. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, other members of the court, we have 4 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid order recommendation for bid number 2011-144, sale of recycled paper. Our recommendation would be towards the high bidder, Southwest Paper Stock for the Gaylords at $75 a ton, Evergreen Fiber Sales for the mixed ledger $270 a ton, cardboard $170 a ton, and white ledger at $350 a ton.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2011-118. This is our annual contract for temporary general labor for facilities management. Our recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in the court communique. Last year's expenditures were approximately $44,000.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Number 3 is another bid award recommendation for our bid number 2011-130. This is our annual contract for interpretation services for the deaf and hearing impaired for CSCD. Recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, selecting as our primary vendor Texas Interpreting Services, our secondary vendor, the Deaf Action Center. We would recommend rejection of 2 bids, one that we received from a company called Hired Hands that did not include the addendum, and the other recommended rejection from a company called The Language People, who did not sign their bid document.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is another bid award recommendation for RFP number 2011-133. This is an RFP for electronic equipment protection coverage. Recommendation would be to award on an annual estimated premium of $21,306 to Key and Prescurant Insurance Agency.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any appointments today? There being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum. Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Mays.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have items to bring to you this morning. The first one is the Tarrant County 911 Emergency Assistance District's proposed 2011-12 budget. Mr. Petrie is here to address the court.
Your Honor, Commissioners, Mr. Mania's staff, thank you for allowing me to brief the Commissioners Court this morning concerning the 2012 budget of the Tarrant County 911 District. Since the first call was answered on August 2nd, 1987, over 42 million 911 calls have been processed through the system, and we've never raised our service fee. The 2011-2012 budget has been crafted to support the district's forward movement in a number of critical areas. Continued emphasis on increasing wireless 911 reliability through continued wireless testing of new wireless devices and services, and expansion of wireless one-on-one training in our PSAPs. I got ahead of myself, and I apologize. I'm going to skip through the customary boundary slides. A little bit about the district first before I continue. We support 54 public safety answering points. 34 of those are primary, 7 of those are secondary, 11 of those are backup sites. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment, and 2 of those are training. We have 41 member entities within our district, 38 cities, Tarrant County, DFW Airport, and the Naval Air Station. population of just over 2.2 million within the district boundaries, 1,100 square miles, 1.1 million wireline database records, and this is a declining number. We estimate we have approximately 1.5 million wireless devices. Most of those are on teenagers, I believe.
The 2.2 million, so what areas outside of Tarrant County are you covering?
City of Irving, DFW Airport, any city that is in Tarrant County but extends outside the boundaries of Tarrant County, such as Grand Prairie, Mansfield, Benbrook. Fort Worth is into Wise County now, so on and so forth.
They're heading for Mexico.
I believe you're correct. The Canadian border, I believe.
Both.
And last year we answered 1.9 million 911 calls. 76% of those were via wireless carriers, and in July of this month, 80% of all 911 calls were from wireless carriers. So it's very imperative that our wireless program continue. All right, let me continue. Continued efforts to assist in reducing personnel costs of our member PSAPs through assistance in recruitment, pre-hire training, testing, and retention programs for 911 call takers. A continued focus on continuity and continuation of operations through our regional relocation site strategy, of which you are a valuable partner. An expansion program of on-site power support to enhance the ability of the PSAPs to remain in their primary facility and sustain normal operations during limited commercial power failures. Let me go back and talk just a little bit about our regional relocation strategies. You are a very valuable portion of that, providing us 2 of those locations through lease agreements. Our strategy is to provide 911 equipment for the larger public safety answering points, Fort Worth, Arlington, Grand Prairie, Irving, within their own facilities. For the other entities, we provide access to a regional relocation site. Currently, we have 3 of those: the Northwest, Northeast, and the South. We lease space in the Northwest from the county. We lease space in the South from the county. And the Northeast is at the Colleyville, in Colleyville. I try not to say exactly where they are. We're also in the process of exploring the effect of PSAP consolidation. We have several of our public safety answering points that are consolidating. Keller, for instance, answers calls for 5 entities, and there's another 4 communities, which I've been asked not to name them yet, another 4 communities in the Northeast who are also looking at consolidating. So at the present time, I've made an executive determination that we will hold fast with 3 relocation sites until we know what the effect of those PSAP consolidations will be. We're also making planned progress on our next generation 911 through continued interaction with our user base, proof of concept projects, development of an IP-enabled network, and upgrades to the customer premise equipment to support migration to next generation 911. Let me hit a few highlights concerning our budget. Overall, the district expenditures this year have increased about 3%. Expenditures for enhancements you'll see in the budget includes growth, moves, and changes to our member entities' public safety answering points. An increased focus, as I mentioned earlier, on interruptible power support. We're replacing uninterruptible power supplies in many of our locations to allow our PSAPs to stay on site longer. An expanded training program, including additional courses that may be required by recent legislative action, and assistance with pre-hire testing and support for all call taker retention at participating PSAPs. Next generation projects include an IP-enabled network and joint efforts directed cooperative procurement of a next generation 911 network with our partners to the north and the COG. We have included a 4% merit pool in this year's budget based upon recommendation of the district's compensation consultant following a recent salary review of local entities showing several of our positions were below market value, below local market, excuse me. At the request of several of our entities, the district has just completed a feasibility study concerning our possible involvement in a regional radio system. In anticipation of a favorable study and the appropriate approvals, $800,000 in consulting services have been included to this budget for the design of such a radio system. When the time is appropriate, Rick Brunson, your appointee to the district, will brief the court on possible board action related to the outcome of this study. I would also like to thank Eric Borsell and Daniel Webb for serving on the feasibility study steering committee. Our budget in the simplest of terms. We anticipate revenues of approximately $12.95 million, expenditures of approximately $18.2 million. That will require a transfer from our equipment reserve fund of approximately $5.3 million. I also anticipate at year end we'll still retain about $20 million in equipment reserve fund. I have provided you a complete budget packet for your review. The packet contains specific information about our revenues and expenditures. It also contains a 5-year forecast and, Judge, an audited balance sheet, as you suggested several years ago, for fiscal year ending September 30, 2010. While it is difficult or even impossible to predict future cost, I feel confident we have enough reserves to meet our next generation upgrade demands. As I've said many times, we have to be able to plan today to implement technology tomorrow that hasn't even been thought of yet. Your Honor, I'll be happy to answer any questions you or the Commissioners Court may have, and thank you again for your support.
Questions?
Yeah, I did. Greg, on your, you're taking the $5.3 million out of your equipment reserve fund.
Yes, sir.
And that drops that balance to about 15?
Drop it to about $20 million at the end of next fiscal year.
220?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How high has that balance been? Is it at its high now?
Yes, sir. I believe it's at its peak it's ever been. Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is generally refreshed with excess revenues over expenses, or?
We intentionally budget dollars to go into the equipment reserve fund so we don't have to borrow money, so we don't have to float bonds every time we do an equipment refresh. With the very beginning edge of a equipment refresh, and that will be somewhere in the $18 to $22 million range for that equipment refresh.
Okay.
The revenue that's coming in, is that primarily, that money's coming from the state and from the money they collect?
It's service fees from 3 different sources: wireline service fees, which the board governs; wireless service fees, which the state governs, and we receive a percentage of total state revenues. About 15% of the state population reside within our district footprint. And then VoIP, or voice over IP, service fees are separate, but they come directly to us also.
Is the state retaining some of the money that they're collecting as opposed to distributing it all?
We receive 100% of our allocations. The area of the state, approximately 47% of the state that is not covered under an emergency communications district, that money is not being distributed. However, our money is being distributed.
So we're getting 100% of the money they collect from our area?
We're getting 100% of our allocations based on population, not necessarily collected from our area.
I think the answer is we're probably not getting all of our money, but we're getting all that they're going to give us.
Well,
that would also be valid.
That's what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is that the technique now seems to be, let's collect the money, but let's not distribute the money. We saw that in a task force that I sat on last week. There's about $7 million next year that they're going to collect that they won't let us distribute. So what I'm asking you is, how much money do we collect, and how much money do we actually then ultimately end up receiving in comparison to what we actually end up collecting in this area?
If you take, and we audit those figures every year, in fact, every month. The state gives us an accounting of the collections, and we receive 15% based on population of what they collect. I can't tell you if we're receiving 100% of what somebody within our county is contributing, because it all goes to a pool. It all goes to a statewide pool and is redistributed on population. But I am confident that we're receiving 100% of our population allocation from the state.
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, except that still tells me they're holding money.
When But when do you plan on bringing Northwest online for the backup location?
The back room equipment is already installed and online. We are this budget that I just reviewed with you includes furniture for that site. We anticipate ordering that immediately October 1, so I would hope we would be online by the first of the calendar year.
How are you coming with mapping the county so that you can be sure that when you get one of these cell phone calls, you can determine where it's coming from?
Longitude and latitude mapping has been completed for several years. We're in the process of completing what are called point files. And point files, they have to explain it simply for me, but in point files, it's a dot on the point of the earth that's assigned to every parcel or every address. And that dot on the point of the earth can contain a multitude of information about that call, about that site, about residents, whatever it happens to be. And we're about 25% complete with that point file layer.
And how are you doing this point file identification?
We do our best to how do I say it, to use data someone else has already collected, whether it be the appraisal district, whether it be the city, whether it be other appraisal districts. Since part of our territory is within Dallas County, we get information from DCAD for Irving and parts of Grand Prairie. So we try to utilize data that's available. On a very limited basis, where data may not be available, we have just recently issued a contract to secure some data within a section of the city of Fort Worth. They had no data, so we issued, I guess would be the right term, a contract for the acquisition of that data. We have one person on staff also that goes out and fills in the holes, for lack of a better term. If we have a new subdivision or a new address, he'll go out and shoot that particular address. But one person can't do a large geographic area. So we use contractors to gather that data.
Why would there be a section of a city where homes exist and people pay taxes on those homes that no data exists for those homes?
Commissioner Brooks, I can't really answer that question. I know that in this particular area that we've just recently issued a contract that there was no data available, and the fire department in the city of Fort Worth, for instance, the fire department is the one that manages that particular data, the addressing data, and they said they would not go into that area to secure that data. I do not know the particulars of that or of why. We just were able to secure a contract to go gather that data.
We're talking about an area of my precinct called Stop 6. It contains several thousand homes. It's a traditionally African-American community. And to be told that those taxpayers have no data available on their area when they do pay taxes on their homes, and further, that it's too dangerous for people to go in there and go door to door to obtain the data, offends me, and it offends the residents of that community, and it should offend Tarrant County. I don't understand what the problem is, and there should be a solution within the standard operating procedure of the 911 district to collect this data if in fact it does not exist.
And that's exactly what we did, sir. We issued a contract to have a contractor go in and gather that data for us.
So
we don't physically have enough people to go gather that data.
But you have
approximately-
people on your staff who go door to door in other communities to obtain that data.
No, sir. No, sir, we do not. Gary only goes out in selected areas where there's holes. Our one person could not ever in his career gather the data. I believe there's 47,000 access points within the area that you're referring to, and he could never collect that data. One person could never collect that data.
So you contracted with someone to do that?
Yes, we did, with a firm that specializes in the collection of point file data.
Where does the other data that we've got, did you collect that from other firms, or was it gotten from the city, or what?
In most cases, it comes from the governmental entities,
the cities,
who have either contracted for it or have, in newer areas, it's required as a plat is delivered, that data is required now. In the particular area that Commissioner Brooks is referring to, we didn't even know what GIS was when that particular area was developed.
But my question is, historically, has the city of Fort Worth done that and provided that information?
Historically, they have provided that information where it was available, yes, sir.
So why, and so why didn't the city of Fort Worth provide this? Why are we having to go out and contract to have that done? Why isn't the city provided it?
I cannot answer that question. We needed the data, so we contracted to go gather the data.
You also mentioned that the Tarrant Appraisal District is a source for some of this data.
I believe they also get their data or receive their data from the cities. I know they don't have a staff that goes out and collects it.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? No actions necessary?
You're correct, Your Honor.
I'll come back.
We'll be bringing this back for court action next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members of the Court, if we could go somewhat out of order, Facilities Department has a presentation they would like to make at this time. Mr. Phillips.
I would like to update you on the progress of several of the facilities management construction projects. First, the 1895 Courthouse Clock Tower. Back when we were designing this project last year, the staff had planned on providing the Commissioners Court with several options to put a patina or a color on the copper dome. The patination process for copper is a controlled process. However, the outcomes can be somewhat unpredictable given weather conditions and chemical mixes and other factors. So staff recommends we do not put a patina on the copper and we allow it to oxidize naturally and age naturally. What I have for you for your inspection this morning is a sample of the copper that will go on the dome and also have some photos to discuss with you.
How long will it take this thing to weather?
Depends on the weather.
Is, David, is the ones that they took off, is it that same kind of ribbed? Was it ribbed also?
Yes, sir. They call that fluted. And I went to the contractor's work site last week, and they have a large brake machine that breaks sheet metal and molds and stuff, and they have to do each one of those little corrugated cavities at a time. So
they got a fluter out there.
They got a fluter. What I have for you this morning is some photos of the copper dome for the Villa de Leon Condominium building, which is just a couple of blocks from here. On the first page is the copper dome when it was installed about 2 years ago. On the second page is the photos of the copper dome last week. Now, I can predict with a fair amount of accuracy if we do not put any patina on our copper dome, as they did not, I think our copper dome will have a patina similar to what you see on the second page a couple of years from now.
Then at some point it will turn green.
At some point, yes, sir.
Not in your lifetime.
As an added incentive,
I believe it will.
the contractor will give us a credit back of $19,000 if we do not do a patina.
Sounds good to me.
So I'm asking court's approval to move forward with no patina on the copper dome.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Please record that Commissioner Brooks is not present.
With regard to the cast iron balustrade damage that I briefed the Commissioners Court on a couple of months ago, there were 68 of the balusters, they're the decorative hourglass pieces, vertical pieces, around the lower part of the dome, the clock tower. 61 of those were damaged, and that damage was covered up with that asbestos-containing roofing cement. In lieu of having to, which our original intent was to have to recast each and every broken piece, Art Wyman called in a metallurgist to help him determine the exact welding techniques to do repairs on the balusters. And what we've done to also do the cracks, and also they had to fill in gaps where they put some large pieces of steel plate and do some welding. Out in the hallway for your inspection, there's a baluster that's been repaired. After Aaron Metalworks did the repairs, we did a thermal stress test on that particular baluster. We put it in one of our jail walk-in freezers at 0 degrees. We left it overnight. Then we brought it back, put it out in the hot 105-degree sun, and did that 3 days in a row for a thermal stress test, and those welds are holding up just fine. So we are not going to have to recast only but one of those balusters, and that's the one that was wooden that was found. So that'll save quite a bit of money.
Are you going to turn the one that's upside down over while you're doing this?
No, sir.
Okay.
All the cast iron balustrade, that's on a higher area. All the cast iron balustrade work that I described to you a couple of months ago is going to cost about $75,000. Moving on to the jail project. There have been over 385,000 construction labor hours expended on the project since April of last year. A couple of weeks ago, we had our first lost time injury. A granite block fell on a mason's foot. He had to have toe surgery last week, but he's doing fine. There are over 220 workers on the project today. As far as progress of the project, the kitchen walk-in freezers and coolers are being installed now. The building HVAC should be turned on next month. The Sky Bridge exterior should be complete next month, and the exterior brick and granite work should complete by the 1st of November.
David, a couple of weeks ago, we talked a little bit about that, and we were talking about the security system and the fact that the two security systems would not talk with one another. I thought that part of our contract on that was to eventually get the security systems where they would work, and that we were going to build holding cells and kitchen, and all that was going to be coordinated so that the security systems would work together.
Judge, our purpose of doing it all together was to have some operational efficiencies regarding the training and education of the officers who actually use the security systems. They are the same, will be the same systems. However, they do run separately. Well, one of them runs the correction center, and the other one will run the new jail. And we did that for operational efficiencies, also for spare parts, inventory costs, and things of that nature. We'll have one fire alarm manufacturer and one security system manufacturer, so we don't have to keep the touch screens in different manufacturers and those type of things. Now, I do believe, I'll need to check this, Judge, but I do believe if one fails, the other one can take over and control the other building.
Okay.
I believe that's correct. Now, I think the Sheriff's Department, because of the number of doors, there's several hundred doors that operate in that jail, the correction center, and there are a few hundred in the new building. I think they plan to operate those security rooms separately because of just the quantity of operations they have to do. They have to operate the elevators, the doors, the cameras, and those sorts of things.
But the other things, we're doing everything else, getting everything else done, is the kitchen, the holding cells, all that other stuff.
In the correction center?
In the new jail and getting
Well, the new jail does have a new kitchen in it, and we're moving, that'll probably be one of the first things we start up, Judge, is the kitchen comes online. One day we'll just move the whole thing and move all that effort, and that will probably be one of the first things that happens. And I think that's probably in April or May or June of next year, whenever the sheriff feels he's comfortable with it. and so we'll be able to vacate the old kitchen area. Now, we had planned eventually to renovate the old kitchen area to a court holding area. Now, that is not part of Gilbane Building and Pegasus, Texas contract right now, because we held it out because we didn't bid it at the time because we didn't want to bid something that far away that was going to happen, because it has to happen once the new jail is finished. So the actual work wouldn't be able to start till next summer. So that has not been bid.
Is there any reason why, I mean, last week in talking, down at TAC and talking with the other folks from around the state, just like us, everybody's coming in under budget pretty much on their construction projects. I don't know how much we're coming in under budget on our jail. I've heard that we are. I mean, we've been talking about that, and I guess the question is, should we not go ahead and bid and get this work done on creating those holding cells down there and get this all taken care of while we're, at a low in our construction costs?
Yes, sir. We do have some deferred maintenance things that we have on our radar. The 20-year-old elevators, I think it's $2 or $3 million. Also, the inmate property conveyors that kind of like a dry cleaners, they're big conveyors, and they're inside the correction center. They're kind of falling apart. So we have some small things we'd like to take care of. Also, the holding area, and also a property room, probably relocating the sheriff's property room from the basement of 300 Belknap, which is the old white jail, to possibly to another site. So we're looking at that now.
What site? Well, I mean, you want to put it in 350, or is it?
Well, right now we talked about putting it out at Cold Springs.
That may not be such a good idea.
Okay.
We close that facility down. Is there room at three? And I guess if when you say the property room, is that the property of the folks who are currently in the jail, or is that just property?
Evidence and that kind of thing. It's in something they've been in there since 1963. It's in the basement. Our goal is to shut down 300, and that's just one of the components we'd like to move out so we can shut down the old building. Now, the inmate property, the inmates that are in the jail, is on a conveyor that I discussed. That's actually in the correction center. But the actual evidence stuff, the fenders and the benches and those kind of big evidence things are in a property room.
Is there any kind of a property room at 350 Belknap right now?
Not that I'm aware of. I do believe the city of Fort Worth at one time did have a room up on the fourth floor that they kept a lot of their firearms and stuff, but I don't know if that's vacated or not. I think they may have moved out recently.
And that conveyor system that we're using right now would be accessible by tunnel to 350 Belknap?
Well, the conveyor system is full of little bags full of inmate property. It's
just going around on little...
Yeah, it's a totally separate little item. The conveyor's falling apart. The property room that I'm talking about relocating actually has storage racks full of stuff.
But that's not of the inmates that are currently visiting with us?
No, sir.
That's generally crime scene.
Crime scene
stuff. How many square feet are you talking about for that storage?
Commissioner, it's somewhere, it seems like it's 5,000 to 6,000, 7,000 square feet, generally in that area. It's below 10,000. Moving on to the correction center again. Next door to the jail, we also to the new jail, we're replacing the security system and the fire alarm system in the correction center, and we're doing that one floor at a time. The fire alarm replacement work's going fine. The security replacement work has had a rough start because we're trying to reuse some 20-year-old electrical power supplies that supply power to our new touchscreen control systems. And those control systems, they control the electric inmate cell door locks, the intercoms, and the lights. Back in 2009, when we were designing this building, we had to make some decisions on where the old security system stopped and when the new was going to start. We had tried to reuse some of these big power supplies, and it looked like it's not going to work, and it's going to cost about $75,000 to replace those. Also, our goal was to take the 20-year-old cell door locks, the electric locks that open up all the cell doors. There's about 1,500 of them. We planned on taking those and just keep using those and making them last 40 years. However, they are not accepting change well. They integrate with the new touchscreen system as well. We're having some problems with that. If we have to replace all 1,500 locks, the cost of that is approximately $800,000. However, we're not there yet. So we are working through it.
Probably kind of critical that those things work.
It is very critical. Our goal was to try to reuse them and reuse as much as we could, and we're having some difficulty.
So when you kind of look at all of this, would you kind of, if we were trying to basically do what we needed to do, or what we might plan to do over the next year, year and a half, at least get us some sort of an idea of what the cost would be to get it all done right now and not put it off, and hopefully be able to take advantage of some of the low contracts that we've got out there right now. When would we have to go forward with that?
We would probably need to, if we were going to do the holding cell work, we would probably bid that 1st of January, in January, go ahead and get the bids let and get the materials ordered, and once they finished, move the kitchen, we could start work.
Are we talking about single sales?
No, sir, I think they're large holding cells for 8 hours or less, something like that.
These are getting the folks ready. As I remember, it's getting the folks ready to go to the courtroom.
It's a staging area so that they can bring them down the day before, so they don't need to move them right before court.
Well, that's the reason I asked if they're single sales.
I don't know the answer to that.
One thing, not to complicate matters, but one thing we are looking at, if you remember a couple of years ago, we renovated a civil courts room, a suite in the Tim Curry building. We made it criminal. We took the conference area and put holding cells back there. We added quite a few benches, and we got jail standards approval and ADA approval to do all that. The judges like it, and they like to go ahead and see about retrofitting all the other holding cells, which would allow them to bring up more inmates and set in those holding cells so they could go to their court dockets and such. So we are looking at that right now. I'm not sure the exact cost. I suspect to renovate all those other holding cells, I would think it'd be somewhere between $125,000 to $200,000, but it sure increases their efficiency.
Now, are you saying do that on the floors versus doing it down in the old kitchen?
Well, it should be discussed, Judge. I don't know if they need both of them to do it, but certainly one may impact another. But I do know the criminal district judges have requested we go ahead and move forward with investigating changing those holding cells up in Tim Curry to increase the efficiency of their operation. And you'll see that from me here in about 30 days, maybe a discussion on that.
Well, so at the same time, I'd like to see the whole discussion with regards to what else we need over in that jail.
Yes, sir.
From that standpoint.
Okay. On to the civil courts building project. When the construction documents are completed next month, we'll take those documents down to the city of Fort Worth for permit review. Once we receive their first round of comments and we have some assurance that the design meets all the building codes, we'll ask the purchasing department and the construction manager to publicly advertise the project for bid. And I think the bid would probably be advertised sometime late October or November. I expect the bids to be out 60 days or so. Once they're out, we open the bids, we evaluate the bids, and that will be done by the construction manager team, the purchasing department, and my department. Now, that will take several weeks because I expect several bids for each of the 40 trade packages. So we'll have to review several hundred bids, and that will take several weeks to do. And once all that's done, I believe I'll be able to bring back to you the construction manager's guaranteed maximum price probably in the first quarter of 2012 by the time we get back on that.
Would you let the court know when you send that package down to the city for review?
Yes. Also, lastly, the medical examiner's office expansion project, we actually can see the finish line. We're going to be moving in the new lab building in 26 days. And once we get moved in totally, we'll start doing work in the existing morgue area, 22-year-old morgue area. We're going to do some remodeling there, and that construction should wrap up the end of December or in January of next year. And that's all I have this morning.
Very good.
Any other questions?
No. David, could I see you right after the work?
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Already got a request.
Members of the court, we have two other items to bring to you. I'd like to make a comment as relates to item D. This concerns the redistricting update for the JP constables. We intend to bring to you next week the initial illustrative map as relates to that redistricting effort, so we can begin that process. Our goal is to finish that process by the end of September, no later than the first week of October. So, members of the court, we can now go to budget-related issues. And, Ms. Snyder, you want to go first? You want me to go first? Or why don't you go first?
Yeah.
That way they can really hand it.
He didn't go to.
You want to help me hand anything out?
He didn't go to Perry still, did he? I don't think so.
I want everybody to note that we put Helen and Dr. Mix's daughter to sleep.
Granddaughter, I believe.
Yes, Helen's granddaughter.
I just didn't want you to imply that the captain was sleeping on us back there.
No, the daughter. She looked very comfortable. She was yawning every time I looked at her.
I know, I kind of wished I was sleeping through some of this.
By and large, I have some minor things we need to discuss. There's some bigger topics here that we will focus on also. But what I passed out here are just some noted things that we need to touch up in the budget. Most of them, again, I said are minor. And just to kind of recap, number 1 and 2, county criminal judges are eligible for longevity after 16 years of service. We left out the 2 that will come in 2012. We need to add that. Item number 3 is a small salary error on an employee, which you will hear about later today. Small department, dollar amount will be wrong otherwise. Number 4, we overlooked the fact that this one family court has the auxiliary or backup coordinator in their budget and didn't fund them the additional $500 we traditionally do for education. Human Services is the most noteworthy. Back during earlier time of the budget process, we asked Human Services to take a look at their rental space that they had, and currently those locations are in Bedford and Arlington, to see if we were utilizing our employees to their highest degree at those locations. What we found out is that we step back, close those offices, we can actually take those employees and mobilize them to off-site locations owned by other nonprofits and actually cover more territory. Right now, obviously, our Resource Connection offices are in Precinct 1. These field offices have served Precinct 2 and 3, and now we'll be able to serve Precinct 2, 3, and 4 by having field operations for our Human Services caseworkers. So what you see there are the building, the rent, and some of the associated utilities that will be decreasing because we're terminating leases for efficiency purposes and obviously to save money. But also we will incur a little bit more mileage and some mobile phone allowance as we put these individuals in the field. The subscriptions there is not related. It's just a tool they need to access in order to verify employment. Number 6, we've talked about the career paths for the district attorneys and for the court coordinators. And when we left the budget hearings, what we said was that the district attorney's office could reestablish their career paths as long as they could fund it within their current salary budget. But we said the court coordinators also in career paths, we'd have to step back and look at their funding because they're from little small departments that have traditionally no turnover. So we have looked at those. In the budget cover letter, we talked about there being 8 employees. Those were 8 employees that were past due date for their career path movements. When we look forward into fiscal 2011, there's actually a total of 13 that will become eligible. 11 of those will be under minimum plus 10 of their new grade and would be eligible for salary increases. The dollar amount there, $36,000 in related fringes, is the impact of that. Transportation, we noted that the department has gone to using temporary employment now that construction is down in the unincorporated areas that does driveway inspections. That position became vacant, so we have technically defunded it, but left the FTE on the books, and they are now using a temporary tune of about 24 hours a week. And while we defunded the full-time position, we failed to fund the temporary money, so that the temporary salaries there is for transportation for the driveway inspector. The last item we're still wrestling with, this is not a done deal yet. We had our PEBC rate-setting meeting Friday? Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yesterday.
Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. Hello. The other day, are you calling? And of course, we had our accrual meeting probably about 8 working days ago. We're still wrestling with the overall funding that we've got going into the group insurance. We're fairly comfortable with it, but the notation I've made here, and this is where we're focusing, is on the retirees portion of the group insurance. There's a possibility that we may end up moving up to $895,000, which is currently an undesignated, which at one time before we submitted the proposed budgets, we're going to move to retiree health insurance, but we backed off on that until we had all these collective meetings. So there's still a lot of discussion going on. I'm just here telling you now that that's a possibility. At this time, I'm leaning against it. This is one of these internal discussions that just won't end. So I am, beyond a shadow of a doubt, recommending that we approve number 1 through 7.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items 1 through 7. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Please record that Commissioner Brooks is not here.
Again, I'm going to make note that this may be something that we put in the final documentation. Obviously, we'll disclose that in the cover letter to the budget and let you know the final outcome.
And then number 8, you're just going to simply transfer?
If necessary. It's still a if necessary, unless someone now says do not. Next page are some of the pending issues. And I'm going to skip to number 2 first. Probably take up 2 and 3 first. We had a request from the Sheriff's Department for additional bailiffs. In discussing with Mr. Manius, I think we're still of the opinion that we want to step back and look to have an outside professional come in and review some of our staffing issues, whether it's with courts and security or with the jail, and come back with some recommendations. One of the things we kind of touched on is maybe we don't need certified peace officers at every post, at every door. So before we talk about funding additional positions, we want to go forward with some solid recommendations. So Mr. Manius, I think, is in discussion with some companies or individuals, and we'll bring that back to you at a later date. Funding from that would have to come from undesignated once we have more information on the cost. Commissioner Wynn, we left the funding issue for security at Mansfield Sub Courthouse. I'm unaware if there's been any progress on that one way or the other. I think we talked about the maximum amount that would be needed there is $60,000, but technically it's still in the pending bucket. Still pending.
Still pending.
And again, it's not something that has to be solidified with the approval of the budget, because we do know that there are things that will occur after the budget is approved. That's exactly why we have undesignated funds, so we can address that at any time. Salary adjustments. We presented a budget that included a 3% worth of funding for salaries, additional salaries. The discussion focused on the day of the hearings for a lump sum. So at this point in time, that's the direction we're taking. And I make note of that as being an important topic because we will be in a position of having to advertise elected officials' salaries if necessary, along with our notice for our public hearing on the vote of the budget. That vote is scheduled for the 13th, and we have to run that ad 10 days prior to us voting on the budget and tax rate. So this is the last court date before we go there.
Any discussion related to that?
Well, have we voted that it's going to be lump sum?
I think that's kind of the way we left it the days when we were going through the budget hearings. Now, I don't know if that's still the sentiment of the court or not, but we do have to address whether or not that's going to be the way we go, whether or not, and then again, last year, you'll recall, under the lump sum, we said that you had to be here as of a certain date.
Right.
In order to be eligible for that. So, in effect, what we need to decide is it going to be a lump sum? Is it going to be added to the base? If it is going to be a lump sum, then what's the effective date? And we have talked about 3%, and when it was a lump sum, then I think we were saying that, there wouldn't be any varying, so it's not a matter of it being a merit or anything along that lines. It would have just been 3%. So, I think there's some confusion among the staff as to exactly what they should be planning on and how to go forward. And then, as Debbie just mentioned, with regards to our compensation, that has to be advertised this week or by Monday, I guess, the 3rd. So whatever, that'd be Sunday. So it's got to be advertised
this week. And I almost gleamed over the effective date in that discussion. We used, when preparing that budget, you had to be on board as of August 1st. Now, that's a date that we traditionally use as we prepare merit budgets. And at this point in time, obviously, our recommendation is not for merit because we want to stabilize the future impact of that 3% as much as possible, and merit implies that you have a pool of money with there can be a range that exceeds that 3%. So we use the traditional date of August. In fiscal year 2011, when we did have that lump sum adjustment made, there was an effective date, or you had to be on board with the county by April 1st. And I think behind that was everybody that was awarded the lump sum had passed their probationary period.
Correct me also, I know you've got to do that advertisement. That advertisement you have to do if we increase.
Right. I don't have the
Their salaries.
if they increase or change.
They change their salaries.
Doesn't have to be significant. And I say that because I was looking last night. Yeah. Well, this.
I think we're going to hold that. We'll hold on that first.
Sure.
For a little bit.
Did you have a topic or two?
I had a topic or two, but why don't we hold all of those until after close then?
Okay.
We could do that.
That's an excellent idea, yeah.
I heard it there's an echo in the room. I heard it somewhere before, so.
Is there any other business at this time then?
No, sir. We're ready to go into closed.
There being no other business at this time, we'll recess our open session and move to closed session. Discuss items exempted under 551.07.
Roy run off to?
He had to go to something over at TWC. They were having some sort of a convocation.
You sure he didn't go to Perrydale?
He's holding a sign outside protesting.
Okay.
Not ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We want to continue talking about budget-related issues, and I'd like to talk to you all about two issues. And then Ms. Snyder will come back up and talk to you about salary issues. There was a discussion several weeks ago about the possibility of us issuing additional debt. And I wanted to get back with you all about that. At that time, I asked that we delay any further conversations on it so that we could do a quick analysis as it relates to the debt that we have already issued. That concerns the debt out of the 2006 bond package. And as Mr. Phillips talked about this morning, we're in the process of concluding and occupying the medical examiner's office. We're moving forward with the jail, and that should be finished sometime next year. And then also we're moving forward on the civil courts building. The debt that we needed to finance the medical examiner's office, the jail, and also the civil courts building, we have already sold that debt. So we have that that money already in hand. The thing that I wanted to look at was the issue that dealt with transportation, because we have not sold the rest of our debt in transportation. And so you might remember in the bond package, we had $200 million in transportation funding. To give you a status report of where we are now, we have sold $126.7 million of that $200 million. We have paid, by the end of FY10, we had paid out $53.4 million, which gives us a burn rate of about $10 million a year. That's important because our burn rate has increased. Talking with transportation and the auditor's office, we believe that by the end of this current fiscal year, we will have spent an additional approximately $25 million. So our burn rate is picking up. We anticipate that in FY12, the year we're going into, that we will spend another approximately $25 million, and I'm rounding this, which gives us a remaining balance of about $18.7 million after the end of the next fiscal year.
Hold on. How much are you saying we're going to spend this year?
This current year, we're going to spend approximately $24 to $25 million. We've already spent 53 prior to this current fiscal year, 53.4, and we anticipate spending about 26 for 12. And that leaves us roughly, after the next fiscal year, a little over $18 million, almost $19 million. That's going to be sufficient for whatever we need for at least this next fiscal year. We believe that our projects are fairly much up to date as far as the scheduling of those projects, and that we have adequate money. So our recommendation is that as it relates to the selling of new debt, that we do not sell any debt this coming year, but we will sell then maybe in August of next year, August or September of next year, which will be for the following year fiscal year. We're watching certain things. I know that the T, we have dedicated about $20 million to the rail system. We've contacted the T and talked with them about it. They're not going to need any of that money during FY12. They'll probably need some in FY13, but we would have gone to the market and replenished our cash. So when I basically say we're going to spend about $26 million for FY12, Please understand that that's our best view of it right now, and some of it may slip a little bit, but we believe that our expenditures for 12 would be about $26 million. Taking that into effect, we still have $18 million, almost $19 million worth of cash on the road bonds.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
You said we spent about 53.4.
Yes, sir. Prior to this current fiscal year.
And that's from the beginning?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we started with 200.
No, we started with 200, but we've only sold 126.7.
But there was 40 million of the 200 that's discretionary?
Yes, and that's that.
So that gives us 160, correct?
No,
Yeah, and then we had 20 million that was for the
I
T.
know, 20 million for the T. Okay, look back up. 200 million to start, is that right?
That's correct.
40 million discretionary.
That's correct.
20 million to the T.
Right.
That leaves
140 million.
And you
Now,
spent 53.
yes.
No, wait a minute. Some of that 53 is out of the discretionary.
Sure, and
Is it?
yes, your
Okay.
discretionary spending is involved, is part of these numbers. You might remember how we did discretionary. The first year, every commissioner got $2 million, and every year after that, we've allocated $1 million extra. So the whole 40 is not available right now. There's a portion of it, though.
Mm-hmm.
How much is available to each of us right now? Discounting what we've already spent.
I will tell you that.
What we've spent or what we've committed?
You know, what, how much have we sold toward our $10 million each?
How much have we sold? Approximately $6 million each.
6?
Each, yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm...
Each precinct?
Yes. Now, that doesn't mean we've spent that, but the way that we move forward.
It's available, though.
Yes, sir. And you need to take out of that whatever we've already spent per precinct. Yes, sir.
Bottom line, we've got about 95 million. 127 we borrowed, 53 we spent through 2010. You estimate that in 2011 we're going to have spent 25 million, and you're estimating that in 2012 you're going to spend another 26. That leaves us with 22. We've got 73 that we still yet to borrow, so we've got about 95 million. Of that 95 million, we owe 20 million to the T. So that means we've got 75 million left, some of which is discretionary, and some of which are projects yet to be funded.
The bottom
But
line.
that doesn't come up to 18 million.
Well,
I'm not sure where it is 18.
Well,
okay, so
that's where the 18 million number.
well, you came up. I said 18.7. You came up with approximately
Making
22.
fruit salad again.
There's that right there. I rounded it. You know, I can give you specific numbers if you like. In fact, let me give you those specific numbers.
Maybe I could help just a moment. The 18 million is the cash. It's the cash that he still has out of what he sold, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's cool. Yeah.
That's where the 18 million is.
And I think the difference between, well, I'm not going to say that. It's probably not.
I mean, basically after everything is said and done, by the end of this next fiscal year, we should have approximately $18.7 to $19 million that's still available. You've got plenty of money, in other words, so you don't need to sell any debt.
Is that number based off the original bid numbers on the projects? Like a project was originally stated that it would cost 21 million and the county was going to put in.
What we did, Commissioner, and
some of those jobs bid at maybe 15.
Right. We've only recognized those savings once the projects are completed. So there's some play in there.
I know.
And when you look at that overage or that underage, it's approximately, and we're probably looking at somewhere about $1.3 million so far. That number is going to grow, and it's going to grow because we are at a point in the cycle of construction of these projects where that we're finishing more projects. And once we finish a project, then any savings rolls over into the underage amount.
Well, Renee did a similar analysis a couple months ago?
Mm-hmm.
And that number, not today, but when those projects that were on board at that time, it was over $8 million.
And I will tell you the difference. The document that she showed was there was a starting amount, and there was amount of the bid, okay? And there was about $8 million, or whatever that number was. We're not saying that there is excess revenue until that project is completed. So as those complete, then it's going to move more money in there.
But she projected
right.
when those projects were completed.
Right.
It was $8 million.
Yeah, but you know, our philosophy, we're more conservative on that. We say we're going to count it when we know the project's complete.
Well, $7 million of it was in Precinct 3, so I'd like to share that and use it throughout the county. I'd like to see us do that.
You'll probably get that opportunity.
I don't think.
So anyway, my recommendation is that we don't sell that.
Okay. It's got fuzzy math.
But, what's that?
Well, we'll have to move that. In the final budget, obviously, if we're not going to sell debt, then we've got about $3.2 million dedicated to the tax rate to that next sale of debt. So obviously, we need to preserve that portion of the tax rate for the future when we do need to capture it again. So we've got a one-time 3.2, and that's not exactly the number.
So we'll either add to the reserve in our debt service, or we'll move it and use it on one not reoccurring type.
A one-time expenditure. And that's what we talked about in here, was that while we may not use that money this current or this next fiscal year, we're going to need to use that money on a go-forward basis on the year after that.
And again, what I had hoped that we could do is after we finish this year, and we've got an idea of where our ending cash balances are, to bring all that forward, sit down, and for us to discuss, just as the other day when the hospital district was in here, you know, they said that their bond requirements required them to have 70 days worth of cash in their cash balances. I'd like for us as a court to set reserves for our operating, for our general fund, for our health insurance, and for those types of things. Look at the cash that we have, look at the non-debt capital that we have, prioritize some of those things instead of just, you know, having pools of funds in different places. And then from that, if we determine after we set these reserves that we've got cash that we could do one-time things with, we could either look at construction projects that we've not authorized, like what was talked about this morning by Mr. Phillips about the jail, or we've got the juvenile that we've not done anything with. There's a lot of places where we could look at doing some construction that we know we're going to have to do, and we could be doing them now when the rates are down and employing people, as opposed to putting that off until the economy has come back and it costs us more. In addition, we could also look at making some one-time lump sum payments to our unfunded liability in the pension area. You know, we don't have near as much cash as maybe some other. Collin County just wrote a check to TCDRS and paid off their unfunded liability of $35 million. We don't have that kind of cash sitting around, but we could certainly make some, we could begin to look at some sort of a policy of using some of our cash carry forward if we had excess cash. But until we as a court set on these reserves and look at what do we think is an appropriate amount to have in reserve, then it's difficult for us to decide whether we want to do a building project or whether we want to pay on a lump sum or what we might want to do.
Tear down the old county jail and build a parking garage.
Exactly. We can't do that until we come together with those ideas and then prioritize them as a court. And that's what, I realistically think our year ends in September. If we can give the auditor's office a month and a half to a month and a half to close the books, then we can have that discussion in October, early November, and be able to move forward from there.
The key to it, and Judge, and that's a decision that you all to make on where you want to spend the money. I would just simply request that when you do that, make sure that expenditure is a one-time expenditure, because when we went out on the bond package, you all directed our office to sell the debt but not raise the tax rate, and we've done that. And so whatever amount we have here, we're going to need to use to finance the rest of the transportation. Plus, we have a juvenile project that we've funded a little bit.
I mean, that's one of the things I hope that Mr. Phillips, when we come to that October meeting, will have everything that we would think this county would be building for the next 2 or 3 years on that list, so that we could begin to prioritize. Now, the other thing, I was talking with Gungus Jordan yesterday. They just got through with a review of their indebtedness, and they're reissuing all of their long-term debt at, I think he said, 2.18%. And so I asked Robert, I think you also called Robert Johnson from First Southwest and said, check our bonds and see which are callable and which are not, and whether or not we should be looking at reissuing our debt to try to get a lower rate, because we're probably sitting between 3.75 and 3.75, maybe 4.5% on our long term.
I don't think it's that much. It doesn't matter what we did. I talked to David Mednich at First Southwest yesterday evening, and they're going to go ahead and look at our numbers. They're reviewing all of their public entity numbers, and I asked him to put ours at the top of the list, and he's going to do that. So, okay, I'd like to talk about another issue as it relates to the budget. We have received a request from the Safe City Commission. You might know the Safe City Commission as being an entity that is supportive by the city of Fort Worth, all the major businesses, and also I believe that they're county-wide in certain areas, especially the Crime Stoppers and things like that. They have been working on a project called One Safe Place. And One Safe Place is a collaborative effort that provides services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and they locate all of them in one location. They have been working with the district attorney's office. They've been working with our criminal district and county criminal judges. They've been working with all the major police departments in the city, in the county. They've been working with the Women's Center, Alliance, Catholic Charities, Child Protective Services, the Parenting Center, the Clergy and Police Alliance, and others. And basically the philosophy is that they are acquiring a location. It's a fairly substantial location that they're using monies from foundations and contributions from major businesses here, and they are going to consolidate those efforts so that if a person is either been sexually assaulted or battered, that they can bring their children there, that they'll have all services, including wraparound services. The construction piece they funded, basically, they're looking at operation funds. The city of Fort Worth, through their police department, is giving $300,000 this next fiscal year for this. They're also getting monies. I believe the city of Arlington is giving them monies also. They have requested a participation level from the county of $100,000. We've worked with the budget department to see if there were funds available that were not general revenue monies, that were, in other words, non-tax monies, and I believe that we have identified those. This is a really good project, and this is something that we should at least begin funding, and I'm going to recommend that we use non-general revenue monies to fund $100,000 for this next fiscal year.
Where is this Where is this pool of money?
There's actually a fund that was created probably about 4 years ago. It's called the prevention fee. and it's got some very specific uses and purposes behind it.
Where's it coming from?
At court cost. Now, we had started this fiscal year funding the family drug court activities out of that fund, but at the same time that Judge Whitley was asking us to look at cash balances all over the place, we also identified another non-general revenue resource that we can actually move the family drug court to for 2 years. And then we'll have to go back and look at these prevention fees for the family drug court again. So it's to use up a resource that's been available, that's been made available through the agreement of the Child Protective Services Board. It's our 4E reimbursements. But that will, those funds will be exhausted in 2 years.
And
the prevention fee, by the way, just FYI, generates, in the beginning we estimated that it would generate a lot more than it did. Right now it's bringing in about $100,000 a year.
And so at least for this first year, and our commitment is only a year-by-year commitment that we're asking to go ahead and fund this, but fund this through monies that have restricted uses. And so this is something that fits within that restrictive use, and we believe that
Do you know how much the city of Fort Worth is providing?
They're putting in 300.
300,000.
Arlington's putting in a couple of hundred, I believe.
Is Ken Shatter still the?
Yes.
Do we know if the city of Fort Worth is through the crime control district since it's via the police department?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
It's, again, it's one of those collaborative things, much like the Alliance for Children, in that it's a lot of entities coming together and providing, I think it's going to be an excellent service. Again, the capital part, we're not being asked for any of the capital money. I know I talked with John Robertson from the Carter Foundation, and he thought that, they were going to be supportive of the project too. So I would, I guess, make a motion that we authorize $100,000 for next year on that.
I'll second that.
The motion is second. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Just another caveat that's attached to this prevention fee. It can only be used through a nonprofit. And in the situation of the family drug court, it is entirely funded through Challenge. Challenge is the vendor that runs the court.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the court. Ms. Snyder, you want to talk about salaries?
Salary issues. Of course, our whole motivation of bringing the salary issue item back up was to target this who's eligible date. And just to summarize, we did, in our initial calculation, use an effective date of August. In other words, you had to be hired and on the payroll basically by July 31st.
August of 2011?
Correct.
When we did this before, it was April 1st?
When we did the lump sum, that's correct. We used April 1st, and we wrestled with that date, and in the end, we solidified on April because the connotation was that by October 1st, when we were doing these pass-fail evaluations, the employee would have passed their probationary period.
So I think the discussion goes back to on the salary, whether we're, how we're going to do this. Again, we talked about it being in the form of a lump sum. There's been other conversations about the possibility of going to 3%, going ahead and adding it to the base, and then giving a portion of that, because since it's going to take a while for everybody to do the evaluations, we said that you had to have at least a 2.95 or better in order to be able to qualify for this 3%. Then figuring that it could take through December for folks to come up with that, then what we might look at doing would be to say, okay, we're going to not increase your base until January, subsequent to the time that the evaluation is done. And if the evaluations don't get done, then you don't get it done until your evaluations hit. But as long as the evaluations are done, then pay the first quarter at some time in December. And, it could be the Friday before, let's see, our normal.
Before Christmas?
Yep.
I don't know what the normal payday is in that range. I mean,
The normal payday is the 16th, the 2nd, the 16th. So we'd either pay, I'm sure the 23rd is our holiday. So we could either do it, so then if we were going to pay it on the 23rd, then it would be actually paid on the 22nd.
We might, if you're doing that, you might want to consider paying it on the 9th.
On the 9th?
Well, actually, yeah, whatever that end of that week is, my numbers may be off a little bit.
And I guess the only question, let me ask this question about that. If we pay a quarter, can we actually, I guess we can pay the lump sum for the full quarter, even though, in effect, they would not have worked for that 3%?
I mean, you're really, well.
What's y'all's pleasure on this?
Personally, for me, we voted for a 3% lump sum, given the uncertainty of the economic situation. We were just in Austin, and TAC told us that to anticipate another $14 billion shortfall from the state in the next biennium, I would be much more comfortable if we stick to our decision and move forward. Wait until next fiscal year, and hopefully things will be improving, and then we'll make a decision there. So that's my assessment on that one.
I'd like to see us do the lump sum 3% for 3 months. And pay it whenever we can in December prior to Christmas. Then effective January 1, I'd like to get to give our employees a 3% raise for the remainder of the year.
That's in the form of a motion.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just, so I understand what Commissioner motion is that.
I didn't state it properly. Let's get it stated properly.
Well, again, let me ask that question. What, for the first quarter, we would pay that as a lump sum?
3%.
Of 3%. So if you
I've
were
covered one through December 31st.
If you were going to get $2,000 total, you would get a $500 lump sum.
Right. Total, that's about $2 million. Total.
And then, well,
No,
it would
about
be
1.5.
25% of whatever.
Six.
I thought it was
It'd be about
6.
1.5.
Yeah, about 1.5. And then January 1st, we would then have the 3%. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. A permanent pay raise, 3%.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Now, Tina, what other questions do y'all, payroll or
We still
budget
need an
have?
effective date that you have to be employed by.
Does that include?
Those are the questions that we just wanted to make sure we were clear about. Are we looking at the August 1st date for the eligibility date, April 1st date? That's the first question. What's the eligibility date? As Commissioner Figgis pointed out, when we did the performance payment, we looked at an April 1st date because the thought then was we wanted employees to complete their probationary period by October 1st.
And I'm going to muddy the water a little bit because I'm good at that. Since we're talking about a quasi-year of 3 months of a lump sum, permanent salary hitting January 1st, while the non-exempt, non-law enforcement employees, we can target a date and say if you're not here by June 1st, July 1st, whatever day, then you're not eligible. But if we are, since we are considering making a permanent 3% increase to the base for law enforcement, because they are on the step system, even though we are not funding steps, everybody in law enforcement will have to be eligible come January, or they'll be off the step. even though we're not funding steps.
I'm not sure I followed exactly what you were saying, but I think the intent of the court would be that that all maximums would be increased by 3%.
Come January 1st, correct.
I don't care whether it's January 1st or October 1st.
Correct. It's kind of irrelevant.
That's right. All salary max would be, in step maxes and everything else, would be increased by 3%.
Right.
So that if somebody's maxed out, they won't get a lump, they'll get a 3%. They'll now be eligible to move up 3%.
For all employees.
For all employees.
Exempt, non-exempt, no elected.
Everybody. Effective date, now here's the deal. If you hire somebody if we don't, depending on where we do it, if we bring somebody in on August the 31st or September the 30th.
Or August 1st is the way we have it calculated right now. If you were hired August 1st, you're not eligible. But that's the way it would have been in all the prior years.
So people hired between October 1st and September 30th won't get
August 1st.
August 1st, yes. Between August 1st and September 30th will not get the 3% bump on that deal. Anybody prior to August the 1st will get this. Will get
3% lump for 3 months.
Are we kind of all in agreement on that?
That's an August 1st date, Your Honor.
August 1st date. Okay. If somebody gets promoted from one place to another, they still go to whatever they're subject to the 5%, which is what we've said is a policy of the court now, or I would say the 3%, whichever is greater. So if we had somebody in a position and they got promoted to another position, then if their salary was such that the 3% got them more than what the 5%, well, hell, it couldn't work because the promotion's based upon 5% of
How have you been handling this in the past? The promotional aspect of this.
Well, we've had a promotion and salary raise.
Depends on when it happens.
What order did
If
it
it
go
happened after January 1st, when our intent is to increase the base, then they would get the benefit of the 3%, and then they get 5% on top of that for their promotion. If it happened beforehand, a whole different story. It happens in reverse.
What we've done in the past is pick a target calculation date also. So, for example, we typically have calculated whatever the raises that went into effect in January in the last few years off of a September 30th salary. So if anything happened there was a promotion between September 30th and January 1st, it didn't affect how we did our calculations.
And I think that's the way we should do that, because
you got 3% on your salary that was September 30th.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think we should do it as of September 30th because that's what we're talking about.
Basically, we targeted,
Can y'all make it work using September 30th?
Correct. Yeah. Basically, we would do a 3%, figure out what that flat dollar amount was, and that was what we would award to their
So you're
January
going to make it work
salary.
as of September 30th. We're going to make an effective date August the 1st. With regards to the allowances are going to just stay the same. All allowances will stay the same.
Okay.
Do we want to go back to this?
I mean, our calculation does not include anybody that was hired after August 1st. And we can go back and run those and say you have to have a higher date of, what did you say? I'm sorry, August 31st? September 30th?
No. August 1st.
August 1st.
You get promoted,
August 1st.
The effective date of the...
Is the calculation on, okay, we got it.
The higher date has to be prior to August 1st, and the calculation date is September 30th.
That's correct. Allowances remain the same.
Yeah, the step increase issue, in order for the law enforcement people to get a 3% to their base in January, we have to adjust the structure for them to stay on a step. Okay? So if you are hired on September the 1st,
you are not eligible for the base pay increase. And on January 1st, we're going to adjust those structures. So therefore, you're going to have a group of employees that are now going to fall off the steps.
Let me ask a clarification.
Let me ask a question before you do. What do we have to do away with the step?
Make a motion, and we can just have them in a range.
I'm sorry, GK, but
the only thing I was going to ask, and it was you want to give a 3% raise based on a 3-month period. So if a person is here comes on the job after August 1st, they're not going to get the 3%. But they do get the 3% added to their base pay, do they not?
Effective January 1.
Yes, sir. That's going to clarify your issue.
Okay, my understanding was to get it to base pay, you had to have been hired on or before August 1st.
That's lump sum for the 3-month period.
Just the lump sum.
So everybody that's here January 1st will get a 3% to base pay? Okay. Then we've still got the gap with the law enforcement group.
Okay. I would take your motion, but before we look at that motion, I guess what I've got to understand is if we were to do away with the step system.
I'm not real sure which motion you're talking about. You've already seconded my first motion.
We've already passed that one, haven't we?
I think we haven't voted.
No, we haven't passed on that. Okay, well then we'll wait to your other motion later on. But let's go back and let me understand the problem that we've got. We've got somebody who is hired. I think what you're saying is we're running along here with our jailers, and we've got somebody who's hired after August the 1st as a jailer, and because they're hired, they're in step B, or wherever in the hell they start off at, okay?
It's a good enough example. That's fine.
Just so they started off at B, and so everybody in B right now is making $20 an hour. Well, come
January 1.
Or January 1 or October 1, that base is going to be adjusted up 3%. But that guy who got hired on September 1 doesn't get that. So now we've got two people in B step making different money.
And new hires would come in higher possibly than that person because they would come in on the step.
No.
Yeah, well, that's what she's saying. That's the consequence of with the law enforcement. I guess the other alternative would be to say that anybody that comes in on that step.
Anybody that comes in from August the 1st till December the 31st, they're all going to get a 3% increase January 1 for the remainder of the year. But if they're hired after August the 1st, isn't that the date we use?
Mm-hmm.
They don't get the 3% lump. So that's the only difference in those two.
That cures your problem with the step, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, because it would basically mean anybody hired August 1st or later would get 3% to base in January. Anybody hired prior to August the 1st would also get the lump sum in December.
Good idea. It was a great motion. It's great to be able to sit up here and make things. I mean, I think that simplifies everything instead of makes it more complicated, which is totally opposite of what we usually do.
We're trying back here.
Okay, now we've got that. Have you got that motion? Effective date for lump sum. You got to be here August the 1st
or before.
Everybody. That's elected officials. That's everybody. September 30th.
That's what we base
That's what we're basing the 3% off of. And effective January the 1st, everybody gets a 3% at that point in time to their
base.
To their base.
I'll help you with that motion.
We've got a motion. We have a second. Other discussion?
Can I ask another question here? This item here was listed as briefing. Are we, can we vote on that? Or is that?
Yes, we can always vote on the briefing item. It's on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Do you have another issue?
Judge Whitley.
Yeah, can we?
I made the second.
Can we?
J.D. made the
Who
Johnson.
made the motion?
J.D.
for this?
Mr. Johnson.
Debbie is out here calling time out. What's wrong?
I'll let Robin.
Here's another implication of this. If we adjust the law enforcement structure to accommodate the 3% to base, it now makes all the new hires in this next fiscal year after January cost more because that hiring rate will have raised by 3%. And I understand there's about 31 new law enforcement positions in the budget, so what's been budgeted for them will need to be upped by theoretically 3%. And I don't know what that figure is exactly.
And it may be irrelevant. I mean, maybe.
If we close down one of the jails, we may not be hiring those folks.
Well, the other, whatever.
Remember, I want to talk about that in just a minute.
Whatever the answer is, whether it's a new position or it's just a turned over position that's refilled, the base will cost us more than we've calculated. Whereas most of the other people sitting in this room, our hiring rate hasn't changed.
Why would he change the hiring rate?
Because all the steps have to change by 3%. As long as they stay in the step system, they all have to change.
So you weren't, so therefore you were not anticipating that the folks that would be hired would be making any more than what the steps currently are.
That's really.
We're talking about 3%, potentially 3% on, what was your budget for those 31 positions?
It's today's higher end.
Give me a dollar amount. $1 million, $2 million,
They're
$3
probably
million?
around $1 million.
Okay, so we're talking about $30,000.
Yeah.
Forget it.
It's not a lot of money.
Okay, but I think we have to do it. What we're trying to guard against, we're trying not to create two tiers of employees in the same step. We'll talk about the steps in a minute, but let's, we have a motion, and you understand what the motion is, and you know who made the motions. Is there any other discussion? I hate it that Roy is missing these golden opportunities. Please vote. Motion passes 3-1.
I got one more thing that I really would appreciate a motion on, if it's still the will of court. You know, we talked back again at the budget hearing about including the county-level judges in whatever pay increases, lump sums that we have from here on forward. Traditionally, we've treated them like a district judge, so if the state salary doesn't move, then they're frozen. So if we're going to move them out of that position, I think it'd be best if we had some documentation to sink our teeth into at a later date.
Well, I'll make the motion that we move the unfreeze the county judges and allow them the same increase as the other county elected officials.
Effective 10/1.
3%?
Yes.
Second.
And to be clear, that does include the county court at law judges, the probate judges, or courts, and county criminal courts. So there's 10, 11, 15.
Okay. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I think that's it, isn't it?
And we're going to move the portion of the tax rate that we had for future sale of debt in 2012. We're going to move that into our operating tax rate. We're going to allocate that to undesignated for the time being. That can be perfected and changed as we have conversations that mature on our reserve policies in November or December.
With regards, I talked with Chief Knowles yesterday and asked him to get with the sheriff and then to see about scheduling an appointment with Commissioner Johnson and myself and Mr. Manius to talk more about exactly where we are in the jail. As of Saturday night, we had 986 available beds, not including the 400. How many beds is the new facility going to bring forward? 444. 444. So that's 1,420 beds, 30 beds. So we have got a total, as of that night, we had 234 prisoners, or 241 prisoners at Cold Springs.
20.
If we were to move as we move folks into the new facility, we had 256 in Belknap, females and males. So if we were to move them into the correction center and then the worst of the worst into the new jail, we would still have, if we took the 384 from Cold Springs out of the deal, we would still have over 1,000 beds available. As far as other problems, I know we've got a property room that we would have to contend with, so there'd have to be some way we'd have to look at booking. And this is what I just want to sit down with the sheriff and with Chief Knowles and understand what's going to make it difficult to do that. But from a parking standpoint, we've got a parking garage sitting right behind 350 Belknap that those folks can come down and, they come in the evenings and spend the night there, or on the weekends and spend the night there. I talked with Mr. Phillips, and he indicated that parking should not be an issue with that, with the parking garage.
I think, we can sit here and vent about it right now, but I think until we sit down with the sheriff and Bob Knowles, we
don't understand.
Really can't make anything concrete. Right. I wouldn't be in favor of us trying to move forward with something right now.
And I'm not either, but I just wanted to let the court know we're trying to set up that meeting to get some sort of a feel on that, because that is, we've got probably over $1 million budgeted, and that is just the command folks, isn't it?
Yes, sir, and I could be off base on that number, so don't hold me to it right this minute. I shall look.
So, that is some potential, again, because our population count, our prisoner count is not moved up.
Not the command post. We just want to be careful to make sure it doesn't move.
I agree with that.
If you follow mine.
I understand that. I do. And, our judges, our sheriff, our DA, everybody works together to keep that number down and to keep us with capacity. And, they've done an excellent job on that in the past. And
right.
We want them to continue to be able to do that. What other items, Debbie, do we have?
I guess the only thing I think that and maybe HR would also appreciate this, is just maybe a motion to reestablish career path fund promotions, Tim 1. Girls, does that matter?
So if we do that, now we're only talking about, what we've said on the career path, we've already told the DA that he can fund his career path as long as he funds it out of his current budget.
Correct. Current salary budget.
Current salary budget. So what we're basically doing is I thought we passed all those
We have a motion on the...
we have a motion on the funding for the court coordinators, but since the DA's office is now kind of behind the scenes, we won't specifically be funding them. If everybody's happy with that understanding, then maybe it's not necessary. We all have knowledge of it.
Okay, they're fine with it, so if they're fine with it, I don't see how we need to do anything.
I do still have to work on the elected officials' salary notice. Obviously, I'll work with that in the DA's office. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. We may just disclaim a lot of things. I think in the end, they're going to recommend we go ahead and run it, even though there may be a minuscule difference between the salary information. And the minuscule difference is, I know this sounds silly and foolish, but it may be cents in some case, because we round differently between the two processes, between a lump sum payment and absorbing an increase in your base salary. I kind of looked at that last night, and I just went...
Well, if we can, if basically there's not an increase, and if it's a matter of a couple of cents, then take the couple of cents out so that there's not an increase, and we're
Well, then we'd have to decrease your salary by 26 cents.
I think he's saying decrease his salary 26 cents,
Yeah.
is what he's saying, rather than.
And we can do that too. It's just our methodology, our standard methodology for rounding salaries and payroll.
But, Your Honor, as I understand it, the 3% is going to apply to the elected officials also.
That is correct.
Okay, so there would have to be,
Our compensation will not go up because last year we had a 3% lump sum in there.
that's true. However, the way we advertised it last year was a base salary plus a one-time lump sum. This time, that base salary is going up.
Okay.
It's 2.25%, 3/4 of the year.
Right. It'll come out.
So I'm going to say the safe thing to do there is to advertise.
Okay.
No idea what it'll look like.
Then I want my 26 cents back.
When you get it.
Whatever's legal
Is there
is
anything
what we
else?
want to do.
Yes, sir.
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Anything else at this time? Then we are adjourned. And please remember that we're